Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Nick Miller, retired Deputy Chief from the Valley Volunteer Fire Department, and you are listening to the SA Matters radio show with Dr. Rich Gassaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 76 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. Hey, let's talk for a minute. Have you experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others? If you have, please contact me by going to the SAMatters.com website and clicking on the Contact Us link at the top of the homepage. Think about how powerful that is. The lessons that you learned from your near miss could save the life of another first responder. If you want to share your experience, contact me. I'm coming to you today from the campus of the Ontario Fire College in Gravenshurst, Ontario, where I'm delivering the keynote address for the Ontario Fire Training Officers Association Conference. Today's keynote will cover situational awareness, high-risk decision-making, critical thinking, and resilient problem-solving, all skills needed to be a successful firefighter, company officer, training officer, or incident commander. But before I get in today's episode, I have a big announcement. Maybe I should insert some trumpet sounds or something here. Maybe not. Anyhow, I just released the third volume of the Situational Awareness Matters series. I'm very excited about this. This book is 299 pages talking about issues related to developing and maintaining situational awareness. Maybe you didn't know, but flawed situational awareness is a leading contributing factor for first responder near misses and casualty events. Yet, sadly, most first responders know very little about what situational awareness is, how to develop it, how it erodes, or even how to regain it once it has eroded. This book is the third in a series. It's a collection of articles that I've written on the SA Matters blog that discusses the challenges of first responders face while trying to develop and maintain situational awareness while making decisions in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed, rapidly changing environments. In this particular volume, I talk about training, radio discipline, complacency, communications, expectations, imagination, locus of control, maydays, working command, dispatchers, mindfulness, technology, administrative chiefs, aggressiveness, simulations, and a lot more. If you're interested in ordering this book, or any of the other books or videos I've created on the topics related to situational awareness and high-risk decision-making, head over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the store link on the top of the page. Okay. In today's episode, I interview Brett Thomas, Stephen McInnes, and Richard Crabe. They are all members of the Ontario Fire Training Officers Association, and they're leading an initiative to improve access to information about critical incidents in the province. The Ontario Fire Service Critical Incident Initiative was formed when the training officers of the province realized that armed with accurate and timely information about critical incidents, they could use this data to drive training to improve firefighter safety. What a concept, huh? Currently in the province, there is no formal agency whose charge is to capture and share this information with the fire service. While investigations have been completed on many critical incidents, access to the data has been difficult, as provincial agencies have been slow to share the findings with the fire service community. Not only can this lead to frustration, but it can also lead to misinformation that is being shared. And while the training officers of Ontario can access and use near-miss and line-of-duty death reports from the United States, it is their belief that there may be some similarities, yet there may be some special unique aspects about critical incidents in the province. However, absence the access to data, they cannot confirm their suspicions, and the lack of data that is needed to drive the changes in training. During this conversation, recorded on the campus of the Ontario Fire College, we discussed their vision for creating a system to gather and share information on critical incidents in Ontario. Okay, without any further delay, let's jump into my interview with Brent Thomas, Stephen McGinnis, and Richard Crabe, as I start off by asking them what was the inspiration for the creation of this critical incident initiative.
I guess we refer back to our earlier conversation today when during your class you were able to refer to statistics about what hurts and kills firefighters. And good information, valuable information. What we're looking for here in the province of Ontario is to try to hopefully someday model a system where we can also obtain those statistics and be able to extrapolate that data and be able to turn it into meaningful lesson plans.
Okay.
And I think also, we learn and get a lot of our information from the U.S. model looking at NIOSH and near-miss reporting, firefighter close calls type of thing. And we learn from that for sure, and we model our training and some of the changes we make after that. But really getting the stats and the information for the entire Ontario Fire Service to look at, also considering what our needs in our area is, and to a certain extent get our statistics out there so we can look at how we can make change in the Ontario Fire Service, looking at injuries and illnesses and heaven forbid, for fatalities.
Is there a system in place now that allows any mechanism to have statistical data gathered, assembled, summarized, and then shared out province-wide, quarterly or annually, a report that says, this is how many firefighters get hurt from falls or burns or cuts? In the U.S. we have the U.S. Fire Administration that gathers a whole lot of this data and then puts these reports together, separate from like NIOSH with the line of duty death reports. They're just gathering data on the number of vehicle accidents and how many firefighters suffered a burn of any kind or a broken bone. Do you have a mechanism yet in place that gathers that and shares that data in the province?
Our experience within our committee has been the Ministry of Labor has an arm's length agency called the Public Sector Health and Safety Association, and they were able to extrapolate some workplace injuries and were able to put them together into some useful data for us. But that was just a request from us, a one-time request. I think the data exists out there, but it's grouped together with other types of industrial accidents, deaths, and we're not separating or segregating those statistics.
Okay. Now, how about nationally? Is there any national database for that separates general labor, firefighter type injuries and stuff from general workplace injuries and such? Is there anything that you're aware of there?
There's nothing that we're aware of that does it on a national basis for Canada. And just to back up to the previous point, WSIB, the Workers' Insurance and Safety Bureau, Safety Insurance Bureau, they do collect that data on injuries. Also, the Fire Marshal's Office does on our fire reports. There is a mechanism where on the reporting that they have, if a firefighter is injured, there is some statistical data too, but really it doesn't look like that information gets together. So it's not in a database per se where you can just make a request to say, what are the number of firefighter injuries to do with, for example, not wearing your gloves.
Okay.
Yeah, standard incident reporting through the OFM, EM, tends to be more focused on a municipality. Municipality want to use that database to determine what their fire loss characteristics were. They can achieve that. But as far as doing provincial injury stats, I'm not aware of that ever being done.
Okay.
And published.
Yeah, okay. And then in the States we have NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, that does after incident investigations of firefighter fatalities, but as I was telling you before we started recording, only on an invitation basis. They don't have authority to force themselves into an organization. They'll call an organization and say, can we come in with your permission and do a causal analysis that will include the chronology of the events and photographs and interviews and then recommendations. Anything like that existing currently at a national level?
No, and unfortunately, part of the impetus for this was that those reports are so well done. We use them as teaching aids up here frequently, and that was one of the things that forced us to, because of some of the concerns that are raised by the Fire Chiefs Associations and even our own members, they're looking for Canadian information, so they want to go down that road. And one of my concerns sometimes is, we're a smaller statistical sample, it's harder to do that. But as far as having that depth, we don't have. As a matter of fact, even though we use them for training purposes, I know that sometimes there's a significant incident, and I will take a NIOSH report and an ATF report, and then there'll be the fire department itself has done a report, and sometimes the fire marshal's office of that state has done a report. And for me, sometimes it becomes very significant in size, where the best place is to get the information that we want to pass on to our personnel. So it seems like the states are so far ahead of us in so many introspective ways, and some of it's by invitation, some of it's legislated, some of it's required, and some of it's morally and ethically the right thing to do. And we're in our infancy where we need to get started.
Okay. Now, if I were to go on the internet and look for firefighter fatality investigation reports, not only would I find the NIOSH reports, but I would also find that in some states, Texas is one that comes to mind, the Texas Fire Marshal's Office is pretty good at doing these investigative reports for the purpose of sharing lessons learned when Texas fire departments have fatalities. And I don't know if they have the authority to order the investigation or if they're invited, and I don't know exactly the details of that. But from that, the state created reports and then the NIOSH created reports, I probably could at least easily get my hands on more than 500 reports of incidents where firefighters have gotten killed and had analysis. But if I were to do that search in Canada and collect them all, how many would I be talking about nationwide fatality reports of firefighters that I could get my hands on? So I get an idea. We talking a dozen or 100 or 1,000?
This would be supposition on my part, but I would be guessing a handful.
A handful. So, nationwide?
Nationwide. I would think some of the information that we were able to successfully obtain, I don't know, for my home department, unfortunately we had a fatality in 1988, is a lot of information comes from the coroner's report. So the coroner has legislative authority to go in and investigate, call forward witnesses, whoever they. But unfortunately, it usually results in somebody's death. We're learning from somebody's death, which.
And I would think the coroner's report wouldn't necessarily be asking the kind of questions that would provide the kind of answers that you're looking for toward maybe adding some changes in training practices or policy changes. I wouldn't think that the coroner is digging up the right daisies, so to speak, with his line of questioning.
Their focus
that was bad.
That was a bad way of saying that.
Their focus is that's definitely not their primary focus. However, they do kind of delve into that area somewhat.
Okay.
So if having experience in the fire service, you can start to take some of those answers and those questions and be able to formulate.
So a normal coroner's investigation into a death wouldn't get that information that we were looking for in that case. But if the coroner had enough after doing his investigation and his examination into the death, he decided there was enough information to hold an inquest. An inquest will delve into those types of questions, but that's on a very, very slim chance that the coroner will call an inquest into a death.
So our department did an inquest some years ago, and you're right. Once you get to that point, by us talking about the numbers of how voluminous the research information would be in the States and how little there is here, it makes it sort of sound like maybe that it's not a priority, but it is. When you get to the point there's a coroner's inquest, we put together a task force initially, because we had time before the coroner's jury was assembled, and we made 26 recommendations, and then during the coroner's inquest, the first recommendation the coroner's inquest published was to accept our 26 recommendations and made another 23.
Was this for a particular incident, Richard?
It was for a multiple fatality, not a firefighter fatality, but it was a fatality of 4 people in a
civilians in a
residential home.
Okay.
But going back to what you were saying about the lessons learned, it was truly a process where many organizations got tagged. Everyone from public education in schools and preventive planning and communications, and it was very much a large blanket that was dropped on many organizations. So there is some ways that some of this information has the potential to get out, but coroner's inquests, again, are few and far between.
Mm-hmm. So why not just use the database of the incidents that are already existing in the U.S. from fatality reports to inspire the changes in the way you train or policies? There are so many of them that are already done versus, trying to create your own original database. Why not just use what's there and just take lessons from the ones that are already there?
There's so many great reasons to go down that road, but I'm going to throw maybe a bit of a spin on that, and I'm going to say acceptance. I'll be the first one to say the fires are similar, the equipment's similar, the geography similar. Our countries are so similar in so many different ways, but there is some different history in our organizations, and we attack our problems slightly differently. And when I say acceptance, it's so easy for people, and the fire service is no different, to try and drill holes in things, and all of a sudden it's, the comment will be made, yeah, but that's what they do. Can't you show us where, even when it comes to, you're up here at a conference, and we frequently get the question, why are we bringing in some American speakers? Well, some of the American speakers are the leaders internationally, not just Canada and the States, but truly globally. So many times we're very, very comfortable with American information coming here, but there's always the naysayers that say, yeah, but that's not us. So to get full acceptance, if we can give concrete local examples, mm-hmm. and also it gives some support and introspective to the local fire service, I think it's important. There's other reasons too, but to be able to put a document down and say, there's no way to poke a hole in this because it's local, it's your people, it's your equipment, it's your geography, it's your climate, it's your everything, it's your building construction, whatever it might be, it brings it home.
Yeah.
And it makes it an easier sell. The information is contained in it. But the NIOSH recommendations, there's not too many of those that are off the mark of the Canadian culture.
Yeah, but they're not based on incidents that occurred on Canadian soil, and therefore it just begs to have somebody take an issue with it because it happened there and not here.
I just further to Richard's point, you used the word intuition. And from your lesson plan today, I'm getting a new understanding of intuition. I guess maybe I look at myself as I'm a numbers person, and I like to, if we have data, and capture some of that data, maybe we might find out we're exactly the same, or we might find out there's subtle differences, or we might find out there's major differences.
Without the data, you don't know.
Without the data, we don't know. So how do we determine causal factors? Culture could be huge.
Yeah.
The way we operate in Ontario and maybe in the country of Canada could be huge.
Yeah.
It's just the numbers aren't there.
Now, I'm going to assume, although it might be a kind of a flawed assumption on my part, that each province might have a Fire Training Officers Association like you do here in Ontario. Is that fair to make that leap, that each province has one of those?
Well, I couldn't definitively say that every province does, and probably not different than the States. There's some provinces are much more active than others. There is an active one in British Columbia and here, and I think there's a couple, but the interesting thing is there's no National Training Officers Association or grouping. So like the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, for example, is very active in the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. Total representation, and of course there's a Fire Marshal Association across our country too. But when it comes to the training officers, I would think between British Columbia and us, those are the two main active nucleuses in our country.
Uh-huh. And have you guys had any conversations with the folks from British Columbia to see whether they share your passion or your frustration with not having this database? Or in other words, are they going down the same route that you're going down, just 5 provinces away? And
well, just 5 provinces away, but the other side of the country. Right?
Yeah, right,
and
yeah.
I would venture to gain that same buy-in that I was talking about, that veracity, would nearly apply there. Different provincial law, different building construction, different climate, different, British Columbia is very different than Ontario.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's why we were looking at, I don't want to say a homegrown solution, but some homegrown data. And I think what Stephen said is just so important there to find out what the cause-effect relationship is. Is it marketing? We might be able to somewhere down the road say that the similarity is so similar between us and maybe even certain areas of the United States that we say their operations in these 3 states or 5 states are very similar to ours, and their culture is very similar to ours. So maybe the idea is not to take a national look at the United States, but maybe there's, I don't want to say microcosms, but some areas that more closely represent Ontario. And we say, gee, when we're looking at NIOSH reporting, maybe we should look at those because they most closely simulate what we do here.
Yeah. And if you wanted to, say you could catch the ear of the fire chiefs of Ontario, let's just go on a limb and say they're all going to listen to the radio show and hear this conversation, what message would you want to carry to each of the fire chiefs in Ontario if you wanted to inspire them to get behind your message, your initiative? Why would they even want to? What's in it for me? Why would I invite you guys into my department to sniff around and see, maybe the not so pretty side of how things are operated here? Because, if you're coming in and looking, there's probably something went wrong. What kind of a message would you carry to try to inspire them to want to, jump on board and say, hey, what a great idea, count me in, to the point where they'd say, count me in, and if the next big deal is in my town, you're gonna get the invite.
If I could just jump in there, guys, when you're asking that question, Rich, what jumps out at me is the saying, and I don't know who to attribute this to, but those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. So fire chiefs have risen to that position, and most fire chiefs I know care about their organization and want to move the organization ahead. And how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? So these statistics, these studies, these case studies are just the primary or one of the ways to get there.
Okay.
To find out what the history is.
And I think an important message, and by all means jump in, but I think the important message here is we're not coming in and wanting to investigate and lay blame, find fault. Our goal is to identify an issue that happened, a critical incident, and come to some sort of solution and a recommendation. So other departments can say, hey, I've got a similar situation, I've got a similar policy, or I don't even have anything that addresses that, but I have that threat in my community, so that we can protect the members of the fire service from preventing an injury, illness, or death happening.
So,
and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is we're not looking to investigate and lay blame. That's some other agency to investigate. Our interest is in the safety and the health of the fire service and moving it forward so that no one else has the same issue.
Well, that's really well said, then. You hear the expression all the time, is, everybody says there's so many tools in the toolbox. And we started talking about this, and probably at the inception, we were looking at lessons learned for firefighter safety and thinking about the company officer and the firefighter. But this is also lessons learned to be applied for management as well. If this is done and done properly and done without laying blame, as lessons learned, as progress forward, then really everyone stands to benefit. So going back to your original point, it's a very good point, is that this needs to be sold at all levels prior to it happening. Once a significant incident has happened, this is not the time to go, can we come, can we talk, can we investigate, can we spend time with you? You know how busy things get very quickly. But so to be able to have this tool in the toolbox for a company officer and senior management and everybody in between, the homework needs to be done ahead of time and make sure everybody's got that buy-in and realizes it's non-punitive, it's it's for the right reasons.
I would imagine that out there in the municipal fire community, chiefs that are listening, if I was listening to this conversation, I might think to myself, the idea of having you guys come into my department scares the hell out of me. If for no other reason, I don't know what kind of questions you're going to ask, and I don't know what you're going to find, and I don't know if it's going to be published, and I don't know who's going to see it, and I don't know who's going to then call for my head because your report said I did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. It seems to me that there would be, since there's no system that exists like this already, it seems to me that there would be a lot of risk for me to extend the invitation for you guys to come in and look around, even if your results were not to be, to create consequence or charges or anything, but maybe just to offer up some best practices. Still, if you offer up, say, 10 best practices, that might be construed as my department isn't doing 10 things that we should have been doing, and then somebody who's laying in wait for me, with a political agenda or otherwise, might then take that and try to beat the crap out of me with it. So, I would think that would be a hard thing to sell to a municipal fire chief, is to, the risk seems to exceed the benefit.
And at face value, that certainly seems the case. But you're talking about, for example, in the states and NIOSH reports, at one point they were in that infancy state where they needed to cross that hurdle. So it can be done in a country that's 10 times as large as ours. So I'm sure it's not undoable. It's kind of unfathomable to know how you get that first purchase. How do you convince this group of people that it's going to be in their best interest? And it must be tough. Like, going back to what you're saying about, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 different groups coming in some places for a significant incident in the States, and that must be overwhelming to an organization too, where I know that it's difficult for a municipal fire chief to deal with the investigation that might be done at the level of the Ontario Fire Marshal's office, but to think that there might be a state organization coming in, like we were saying in Texas, there might be 4 different groups coming in and asking similar questions in different ways of all your personnel and going through records, and I see that being pretty formidable, to be honest with you. But eventually, if NIOSH has been able to do that in a voluntary type capacity, then the question is, why couldn't we do that here?
Sure. On the surface, it seems if it can be done there, it can be done here. And I wasn't around when NIOSH's program started, but I'd like to think that they ran into the kind of roadblocks that I described of concerns for what is going to come of this report and this data. And I think that over time they've come to establish a credibility that they're not there to witch hunt or to find that kind of blame. In fact, there's a lot of questions that NIOSH won't ask in one of their investigations. And when I was doing my research and I was using NIOSH reports, I called NIOSH and said, I'd like to know a lot more than what's contained in your report. Your report, for me, from the perspective of the things that I'm doing, is raising as many questions as it's providing me with answers. Because I'm looking for situational awareness, decision-making processes, and the NIOSH report just didn't dig deep enough down those roads. And I found out that they ask very specific questions, and they don't veer much off the script, and they certainly don't look for blame like the bad decision was made by you, Richard, because of this explanation. And so they're very cautious about that because they don't want to be seen as an agency that is, going to lead to these kinds of bad outcomes.
Well, in some ways, that might also be what sort of keeps them in a safe place. And I think these reports are wonderful. I've used them for years and years and years in our organization, but it's interesting when you say where they have a structured process and probably some structured questions. Some of that sort of comes out in the recommendations because the recommendations seem somewhat, I don't want this to sound wrong, but repetitive. You'll read a really great report with really great information and very, very clear about what was going on, what transacted in the fireground, and then you go to the recommendations and you go, I saw those recommendations last time. And if it's a structured approach, you're going to probably not pick up on the things you're talking about. You're going to continually pick up on those communications, charged hose line.
360 size.
Okay. We can rhyme off the top 10 here.
Right.
And it would be your report. You're getting numbers 1 through 8 and 10, and yours is 1 through 6 and 9, and you're finished over there. And I'm not saying they're not good. They're wonderful, but I think you also need some sort of free flow so that you can pick up on things that might get hidden otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think back to your point of why would I as a chief want you to come in and do this type of thing in our community. When we started with the critical incidents committee and the thrust behind it, we developed kind of a set of questions and a criteria and a mandate and what our mission statement was. And I think it would be very important to share that to the chiefs and to the stakeholders to say, here is our goal, here's the type of questions we're going to ask, and this is what our conclusion is going to look like generically. And then on a case-by-case basis, if I were to come into your department, Richard, and say, hey, what about this? And you say, you know what, that's off limits in this case, we'd have to respect that and only make the general recommendations or the suggested look at this guideline, or it has to be non-threatening so they don't feel that it's punitive. It has to be a non-punitive process.
Have you widely shared your mission and the questions that you would ask? Do they know what you would ask if you came in? Now I'm going to put you all on the spot here when I ask this question because we did not rehearse this at all or anything. Do you have that mission? Is it on a website you could bring up on a smartphone and tell me what the mission of what you're trying to accomplish, or at least if not paraphrase it for anybody that's listening as to what your mission would be? I put you on the spot because we didn't talk about that.
The scope is to investigate any incident in the province of Ontario in which a firefighter has been hurt or killed, in studying causal factors, and then relate that back to the membership.
I think it was more of an evaluate was the word we used. Investigate put you on the defensive right away.
Yeah,
Just to evaluate
Yes.
critical incidents
Yeah.
and injuries to be preventative in that it doesn't happen again.
We should have a T-shirt to read it off right now.
We've got the banner, but we don't have it up here. So.
Yeah, we do have the motto and the mission statement. We have we put it together. We based it very much on the NIOSH report type. Looking at those, our beginning, our first draft, and so we had that. And did we communicate it? We attempted to communicate it. How successful were we? Not sure.
Is it on a website somewhere?
The plan is once the project is released, it'll be placed onto our association website.
Okay.
And that's where some of the tie-up in the process the last, I guess, year and a half, almost 2 years now, is that the scope we had anticipated to be broader and to have it more published in multiple locations, Canadian Firefighter magazine and our website and the chiefs and available to the fire marshal's office. But that we've met roadblock after roadblock. So how we've looked at it and the product that we're putting out has changed because of that lack of support for sharing the information. So yes, you're right. Our intention is to put that out there, but we've kind of retooled a few different times on what our product is going to look like, to the point where we realize we don't have the consistent support that has by word of mouth has been there for us. But when it came down to rolling up your shirt sleeves and let's look at some information, the support has not been there. So now it's changed so many times, the product that we're looking at. We're just trying to do this within the Training Officers Association and hoping that the momentum will then grow to something that can be provincial or national at that point. So it's a great point. And we do have it. Is it published right now? We've made attempts, but it's not just. This process has been very dynamic and fluid in how we've been trying to get it out there. And our goal has always been. Sorry, one more thing, and I'll stop. But our goal has to do it well and to do it right, so that the first attempt at sharing information is not everyone wants to pack up their bags and head for the door. It needs to be done right. So that's why it's been a very fluid process.
Yeah, and when we initially started, we were looking at a grant partnership. The first conversations took place between our organization, the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, and they supported the principle. And we saw this initially as something that them having a bigger voice, that they could drive this home. And the recommendation of the president of their organization at the time to our organization was that this is such an important project that we think that you should own it and run with it and we'll support it. So with words like that, we approached the 4 or 5 organizations that we think could pilot this and drive it forward. And over time, we didn't get to where we needed to. And when you're talking about what's available, what's out there, what ended up happening is we brought it in. We knew that we've got people here that are capable. If we had to, we could do it ourselves. And we took a slightly different model. And rather than getting this large partnership or consortium together and hammering out something big, the decision was we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to start small. We're going to grow it. And Stephen said some eloquent words about that. And I think that at one point Stephen said that the idea was we'll start it, we'll make it good, we'll make it important, people will buy in, we'll develop it, we'll grow it. And our hope is that at some point there will be a paid organizational body that would then adopt it. Like I'm sure, the Ontario Association of Fire Training Officers is a group of 6 executives, some subcommittee members, membership of 200 or 300 departments. It's not that large, and there's no full-time staff. There's none of that support mechanism there. So if we could provide something that and it's got teeth and people want it, people need it, people see a value to it, then is there going to be a provincial organization at some point? Whether it's there's several that we can think of that would be able to take it on as their own as a project that would go provincial and farther.
All right, so I'm the chief of a department in Ontario, and I've had a critical incident. and I'm going to have one of these done. Who do I call?
Well, the way we see it working is that you would have the ideal for us is that every fire department has a training officer or a member of our organization who would be aware of the OFSCI and would say, Chief, this is a wonderful organization. I think that we could use and have this organization come help us. We help them, and in the end, do the right thing by getting the message out there.
Okay. All right. So I turn to my training officer. That's my point of contact with you all. I tell my training officer, this is what happened here is tragic, and I don't want the lessons to go unlearned. So, flip the switch, pick up the bat phone, bring in the dynamic trio, and let's get to the bottom of what happened here and see what we can learn from this. Maybe I've been in 30 years and I'm not worried about what somebody's going to think of me because of the findings of this. I can set my ego aside, I can set my fears aside and say, by golly, we're going to be the first in the province, my department's going to be the first in the province to set the standard of learning from critical incidents. So my training officer gives you guys the call. What would I, as the chief, expect the process to be that is going to get to the end? Tell me what's going to happen when you guys come to town.
Well, if I was to throw this out there, and because, as I was saying, volunteer organization, small in numbers, this sounds negative, but it's not meant to be. I think our picture of this initially was that it was a little bit more reactive than that. We're looking at taking other investigations, getting lessons learned, synthesizing it, making it available for the training officers as a teachable. We don't have full-time staff. I don't think anytime soon we're going to be shoving our CIS team on a plane to Thunder Bay 1,000 miles away and getting down and dirty and doing true investigative work. It's more, at its inception, more of a research amalgamation, distribution type. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, see it as a repository. When we had talked before we started the podcast, we had talked about my experience of hearing at another conference about a fire, some causal factors that happened at a fire that were attributed to something. It was talked about as being a bowstring truss roof, and in fact it wasn't. And the only, just because I was there and I knew the building, I was able to correct that misinformation. And that's just kind of a small little snapshot of, we just want to know what happened. Mm-hmm. We want to know what happened. And we wanted to be able to become a repository, for lack of a better term, a hopper for where all of that information comes in, and we can say undisputedly that these are the facts of the case.
So who's going to gather that? Are you expecting someone else to? Because I think what you said, Richard, is you're going to take the reports that are already done and then kind of assimilate the lessons that are coming from those. But at the same time, earlier, before maybe we even turned the recorder on, you guys were saying there is not a large, robust database of reports like NIOSH or some other. It just doesn't exist.
Absolutely. So that's why when we were talking about the initial partnerships, we were talking about the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. We were talking about the OFMEM, Ontario Fire Marshal and Emergency Management Organization, looking at the fire investigations branch of that, and also some other things that we were looking at for statistical information. And that's fair to say. There's not a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of investigative work, and here we are saying, but we're going to take the information that we could glean if we had to through those organizations and try and synthesize it down to something that was manageable and deliverable. Going back to what Stephen said earlier, there's been so many stories told about past calls that the information is so inaccurate now that if somebody is using an example of a firefighter fatality that happened 10 years ago, I can tell you that 90% of the circumstances surrounding what happened are being properly identified and relayed. There's no way, there's no easy way for. There's people that have come on since we've been in the fire service that are hearing stories that are so inaccurate and so wrong, and that's what we were trying to avoid initially. But there is limited investigative capabilities. The vast majority of that probably come from the SIR forms, which is minimal, or the fire investigations, which when we discuss things with them, there is the possibility that some of that would not be available even through them directly to us, that those comments would have to go through the entire fire college, and even then some information might have to be redacted. So, the ideal situation certainly is to have a group like NIOSH, nationally recognized, with funding and support and full-time personnel, and somehow we've got to figure out how you get from a voluntary organization based in an association, much smaller than the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, get it traction, grow it, and get it into something that people are going to acknowledge and respect as being accurate information. So we've gone full circle here. The idea then is to start small, get information, I think show a need, and then look at further partnerships and growing things from there. So,
do you guys have a handle on, say, within the last 15 years, how many firefighter fatalities there have been in the province? Estimated, so I can get my mind around how many opportunities you would have to, gather the data from.
Firefighter deaths in the province of Ontario are big news. So that would be something that, it's that the fact that one of us has passed away because of fire is not hard information to get.
So is there 10, 20?
in a year?
No. In the last 10 years.
In the last 10 years. So that would put us back to 2005.
Yeah. Estimated. I mean, I'm not going to hold you guys accountable. I'm just trying to get my mind around it.
When you think firefighter fatalities in the province of Ontario, you think of occupational cancers. If you're talking about actually
in the act, not just somebody dies of a heart attack in their sleep at the station. Tragic as it be, that's not necessarily the one you would do.
If you're going to eliminate all of those, then I would say, as a guesstimate, if you had 2 a year, it might be 20 people over the last 10 years. Is that a fair number?
I would say 20 to 30 in there, yeah.
Yeah. We could probably, when we recess the podcast, we'd probably go out to the memorial. I'd assume there's a plaque there on the memorial and see, but you wouldn't necessarily know the cause behind each of those names on the memorial. But
the names won't be here; they'll be at the provincial memorial down at the legislative building.
And then, do you have any idea how many critical incidents there are? That just I don't know what your definition of critical being, but about how many of those?
They're unreported. How do you know? Right?
Okay.
It's stuck in statistics with
other occupational,
industrial death.
Yeah.
So for that, you might end up using, if you wanted a guesstimate for that, some sort of model that says, for every fatality you're looking at, 30 near misses and 300 significant incidents or whatever, the pyramid type concept. But again, there's no numbers, and it's the cart and the horse. You need to start looking before you start finding out what you're missing. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep. Brent, you had said along with the mission there was a list of questions that you would ask. But then, Richard, you said we don't want to come in and do the investigations. We want to kind of be the repository of the data that has come from existing investigations. And then you said we just want the facts of sorting out the truth of what really happened. So I'm kind of getting a kind of a three-angled answer to this, what you would really want to accomplish. And here I sit as the fire chief who've had a critical incident. So would you play a role with your questions of helping me to figure out what happened? Or are you hoping someone else plays that role, and then from that a report gets published that you then become a repository for the findings? Help, because I think I'm a little confused. I think there might be a listener a little confused.
Just to be clear, if we were made aware of a situation, firefighter death as a result of whatever, and we were able to gather that information into our repository, and then if we were going to look at it and analyze it, evaluate it, and then make some sort of recommendation, we had an internal process. So those were the questions I was referring to. If we were given the opportunity to evaluate a critical incident, we would say, okay, here's the questions that we want to answer by gleaning that information from what's put into the repository to look at an outcome. Okay, what's the takeaway here, and what do we need to share, or could we share as a result?
Do you have an example of one of those questions, what it might be that was burning in your mind? I know, again, I'm putting you on the spot because we don't have this in front of me, so the listener might think, well, yeah, they've got the questions, and he's going to pick up the piece of paper, Rich, and read it off, or you wouldn't have asked him. That's not the case. There's no paper in front of us, and you don't have anything to read to me. But what kind of questions would you want the answers to?
Time of day, time of the year, how many fatalities, were there civilian fatalities, how did the call come in,
Fire conditions, tasks that the firefighter was performing, conditions of the building itself.
type of occupancy.
Okay. So a lot of that is what I would call, a fair amount of it is general demographic data about the incident itself. Time of day, day of week. It's okay. So our U.S. Fire Administration captures and publishes a whole lot of data on fire incidents, and then they'll put these reports out, and then they'll show the trends over like a 10-year period of things that have changed, and I think part of your frustration is that you don't even have the data to see the trends of what's changing over time, to even know what to recommend to firefighters. And I can see how that the absence of information leads to a great deal of frustration, because you don't even know how to, as a training officers association, what do we recommend to our members as the things they should be focusing on or training on or changing or recommending policies, when you don't have a database of data to draw upon. So what would be your appeal to the fire service of Ontario, absent any direct appeals to maybe other agencies that have not yet, jumped on board with an oorah behind you? But what, if you wanted to see this thing, grow its legs over the course of the next year, and it could, what would be your appeal to other to listeners, to Chiefs Association, to the Fire Marshal's office? And I'm sorry, I don't know the structure in Ontario, but if you had a friendly thing to say, what would you say that would try to get everybody to come to the table and try to make this a success?
Well, I think the hoorah moment might be coming up 2 days from now.
Oh.
The proof's in the pudding, right? You need something tangible, you need something demonstrable. And this group, in the smaller form, doing something internally and growing it, is ready to publish its first findings from a call at this conference. So when there's something there's something on our website, there's something tangible, we should be able to identify this is here, and these are the benefits, and this is where we want it to go, and hopefully get that message out through the training officers, and that should be the impetus for moving this forward.
So there was a critical incident, and you're now going to have something to present to the membership of the Training Officers Association to say, if given the chance, here's the things that we can learn from a critical incident. And you're going to present that incident?
But even more than that, here is an existing concern at a critical incident, and it is now documented, and it is now in the repository, it is now available to you, and going forward, we want to do more, bigger, better, faster.
So that you would call it your first win?
Yeah, we're hoping it is. We had talked before the podcast too about where do we draw this information from.
Mm-hmm.
So we had talked about news stories, and something occurred to me after our conversation too, because we're talking about the coroner's report. So we used a coroner's report about this fire to draw some, while it didn't focus specifically on firefighter safety and habits, there is some information in there about what is agreed set of facts in a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got some credibility there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also had some recommendations come through from the fire marshal's office about this fire that had kind of alluded to it. So there was some intuition in there as to some pieces that we pick out, and we didn't say, this is the causal factor. We just said, based on this fire, maybe this is a good reminder to the fire service in Ontario to focus on accountability. And here's some points in, I believe we use some American statistics on, here's how to check your accountability system. Here's a quick check. Actually, we drew in something from Ottawa Fire on that too.
We did, and some of the legislation too around, here's our guidance note on Section 21, which is, I know you've got OSHA, our Occupational Health and Safety Act. Section 21 is specific to the fire service recommended best practices, so we refer to those recommended best practices on firefighter survival. So that's all part of the presentation and the takeaway from it.
Good. Well, thank you guys for taking some time to sit down with me. We've actually been at this almost an hour now. And it's funny how time flies when you get some passionate people in a room sharing their thoughts and their ideas. Here's my hope, is that maybe a year from now we'll reassemble and you'll say, you're not going to believe the progress that has occurred just in the course of 1 year. And the beginning of the repository, that first win and that presentation, and everybody kind of got inspired by that and took the message back, and now we're busier than we ever thought we would be to gather this data, because the proof, as you know, is in having data to drive decisions, to drive policies, to drive training. And I can just sense your frustration from when I talked to you, Richard, month or two ago, and we talked about the idea of doing this podcast, and then talking with you guys earlier off the record. I just sense the passion for needing good data to drive training and policy and equipment and best practices, and you don't have it. And I hope that you are able to find that success. Let me know how I can help you. I don't know how I could, but if there is a way that I could, I'd sure like that opportunity, because I know that your passion is, your heart's in the right place. You just have to get the right inspiration among the bigger fire service and other organizations to embrace this vision that you have for the capturing and sharing of data that's going to make the fire service safer.
Well, and it's contacts like this conference, so talking to you and the podcast, and then our first heat sheet coming out in a couple of days. One of the other guests at this conference is the publisher of our National Firefighting magazine. So I think hopefully I don't want to use the expression critical mass, but hopefully you're seeing the birth of something right now. And births can be messy and ugly sometimes, but we'll get there. Mm-hmm. And it'll take time, it'll take energy, but there's the passion, like you said. And I think one of the hardest things is when you have a lot of passion for something, and it's something you can't always see progress on. It's easy to see progress at a fire. The fire always goes out eventually. You see things happening, things are moving. This is one project where there's been roadblocks, there's been difficulties, but everybody agrees that it's something that's important. And I think one day down the road, it wouldn't be surprising to me if there's places just over the border in upstate New York that are going, hey, here's some reports of some stuff that happened in Ontario. We'd like to take a look at that. Yeah. I think we'd like to be there sometime soon.
Well, I know now that you mentioned this, what you call it, the
heat sheets.
Heat sheets. Somebody's going to contact me and say, I want to see that. I want to see what they're putting out. I want to see what they uncovered. Is there anything from the presentation that's going to be given that would be shareable, that could be included in the show notes from the podcast, that others might then glean ideas about how to do? Maybe others are trying to do exactly. Maybe they're saying, man, they're going right down the road that we want to go down. Be it a state or another province, or
we'd welcome. Richard used the term critical mass. The more people that see the value of this and look for information, and if we can help them, we'll do what we can to help. And
maybe from a slightly selfish standpoint, we'd love to help anybody that we can to get to the point we are right now, but one step past. I'd love to talk to people that have maybe been in this situation a year or two ago and let us know how they took the next steps. I'd love to glean that information.
Yeah, so if there's any listener out there who've crawled through this broken glass on your bare knees and you've got your scars, but you're standing upright and survived it, and now in your region, or state or province, you've found a way to capture and share these lessons, the contact information for our guests are going to be in the show notes. And I'm sure that they would welcome the opportunity for you to reach out to them and say, we've got an idea. We're doing something. We're finding some success with this or that, or even we tried this and this didn't work. So don't step into that pile of poop and because that's not the way to go. So hopefully, I don't know how many folks will reach out to you, but there might be some that would. I'll put your contact information in the show notes, and they might do that and give you guys some ideas that might help advance your cause.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we'd be happy to send the PDF of our first heat sheet too, so you can put it with the notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes, so everybody listening can just go to the show notes for the episode, samatters.com / and the episode number, and I'm not sure what episode number this is going to be by the time we air it, but I'll announce that at the beginning of the show. And so if you missed it, just go back to the beginning of the show and play it back, and then go to the show notes for that. And with the contact information, we'll have the PDF of their heat sheet that'll share the things that they learned from this incident. What is this incident that you're heat sheeting? What happened? What was it? Was it a structure fire?
Structure fire, restaurant below, housing apartment above, and 2 firefighters got disoriented, and the report to the public was that there were firefighter fatalities, when indeed there was not.
Oh. Huh. So it was reported as fatalities to the public? And then in the media?
And in the media.
Very short duration, but it did come across as such.
Okay.
So everybody in the fire service.
Okay.
Everybody's ears.
Yeah, small community hearing firefighter fatalities, it pushed the panic button in the community.
Yeah, I bet.
And there was not. So.
I bet. Okay. Well, thank you guys for taking some time here at the Training Officers Association Conference. We had class all day today, then we had a banquet this evening, and here we sit back in the classroom, pushing 9 p.m., a testimony to your passion for getting your message out. That everybody else is over at the bar watching the Blue Jays, and who are they playing?
Baltimore.
Yeah.
Actually, they're beating Baltimore.
Are they? Yeah. All right. Did you get an update on your phone while we were doing the podcast? So it's time for us to recess. Thanks for joining me.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you to our guests, Brett Thomas, Stephen McGinnis, and Richard Crabe from the Ontario Fire Training Officers Association for sharing your passion and vision and inspiration for gaining the lessons from critical incidents. I certainly appreciate you taking the time today to sit down with me after a long day in class. And as you guys know, the banquet is just getting ready to start. So, you took some time even away from the start of the banquet to share with me, and I appreciate it very much. Before I close out today's episode, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and the organizations that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stops. Your effort to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making to the members of your department and your region are greatly appreciated. Recent programs included the Fire Rescue Canada program, which is the conference for the Canadian Fire Chiefs Association, and that was held in Victoria, British Columbia, and I delivered the closing keynote address there on the topic of flawed situational awareness. Then I went on to Delran, New Jersey, where the hospitality was just awesome. Thank you, Chief Cunningham, and all the members from Delran and Riverside Fire Department for just an amazing couple days that I got to spend there with you, and the mutual sharing that we learned, including the fact that I learned that in New Jersey, all gas stations are full service. And I have a little funny story about that I'm not going to share with you, about how I got kind of wigged out when every time I turned around to pump my own gas, there was somebody standing there behind me. But the folks from Delran ought to be able to get a good kick out of that, as we had that conversation when I got back to the fire station. And then, of course, I'm here now at the Ontario Fire College in Gravenhurst, Ontario, delivering a keynote for the Ontario Fire Training Officers Association. If you're interested in attending an upcoming tour stop event, you can catch me on, before I say catch me on this one, by the time this episode airs, I will have already completed the first one on the list here, October 2 and 3. I will be delivering 2 programs for the Champions Fire Protection District in Houston, Texas, and that one will have already passed by the time this episode airs. October 7th, I'll be at the Fire Shows West in Reno, Nevada, delivering a keynote on flawed situational awareness. On October 9th, I'll be delivering a program for the New Hampshire Fire Chiefs Association in Concord, New Hampshire. October 14 and 15 at Pearland Fire Department in Pearland, Texas. October 20, I'll be delivering a program for the Association of Air Medical Transport Conference in Long Beach, California. And then I have a sponsor for that program, Spectrum Aeromed. Thank you for stepping up and sponsoring that. They bought some books, and we'd be doing a book signing and a giveaway of some books on the show floor at the Air Medical Transport Conference. So if you're at that conference, come over to booth 941, Spectrum Aeromed's booth, and pick up a free complimentary copy of my newest book, Situational Awareness Matters, Volume 3. You get a brand new one for compliments of Spectrum Aeromed. October 22, I'll be at the Emergency Preparedness and Hazardous Materials Conference in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. October 26th and 27th, I'll be delivering a program from the Hampton Roads Fire Chiefs Association in Hampton Roads, Virginia. October 29th, a program for the Tennessee Department of Homeland Security in Knoxville. And thank you, Jenny Holden, for now inviting me back for the 4th time to deliver programs for the Tennessee Department of Homeland Security. I sincerely appreciate your faith and confidence in my message and my mission. And November 5th, I'll be at the Lake County Fire Chiefs Association in the Cleveland area. November 12th and 13th at the Manager Association of Emergency Services is having me do 2 programs for them, one in Bradenton, Florida, and one in Northport, Florida. November 11 and 12. November 13, I will be delivering a program for the International Association of Fire Chiefs Volunteer and Combination Officers section at the Symposium in the Sun in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Then November 17, I'll be doing a program for the International Association of Fire Chiefs Company Officer Leadership Seminar in Dallas, Texas. Then, I know some of you are not going to believe this, the SA Matters Tour is going to rest. That's right. I'm going to take 2 weeks off and enjoy Thanksgiving at home with my family. That's going to be awesome. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop program, head over to the SA Matters website. Click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Event Schedule. Here's hoping there's a tour event near you, and we'll get a chance to meet up. If you're interested in scheduling an SA Matters Tour Stop for 2016 for your department or your association, contact me through the website, and we'll get something set up for you. If you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners yet, please consider joining. There are more than 5,000 members connected here in the SA Matters community, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train members to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. Membership is free, and when you sign up, I'll send you a free report called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. So if you're not a member yet, head over to the SAMatters.com website, click on the red box on the right side of the homepage. It says free membership. So there's two boxes on the right side, the red one for membership and the blue one for upcoming events. As a reminder, every episode of the SA Matters radio show has a corresponding show notes page on the SAMatters.com website. The most recent episodes scroll on the homepage, but for older episodes, you go to SAMatters.com / and enter the episode number, which I always mention at the start of the show. So, for example, if you wanted to access, say, episode 50, open up your internet browser, type www.samatters.com / 50, and that'll take you to the page for the show notes for that page. The show notes page will contain additional information and resources, and depending on who the guest is, there might also be incident scene, pictures, videos, and audio, and the contact information for the guest. So for this episode, the contact information for the guest from the Ontario Fire Training Association is in the show notes page. You can also leave questions and comments about the episode on the show notes page. If you want to get connected with me on social media, you can follow at Rich Gassaway or at SA Matters on Twitter. The SA Matters Twitter community has more than 16,000 followers to our mission, and for that I thank all of you. We can also get connected on Periscope using the Periscope app, which is an app that you can get on your iPhone or your Android phone, and follow at Rich Gassaway on Periscope, and you'll get notifications about upcoming live video presentations that I'll be doing on Periscope, and those notifications will come on the Twitter feed for Rich Gassaway. So I've been shooting some short Periscope videos and just sharing lessons as I'm on the road. So you can also get connected with me on Facebook, and I would suggest that you do that by signing up for I just started a closed Facebook group. So you go to facebook.com /groups / situational awareness matters. And you can always search that group out. And I'll put a link to that group in the show notes page too. And that will help you to be able to go directly to it. And I've been sending that link out on the social media. So if you're connected with me on social media, you probably have seen that link come through. You can also get connected with me on LinkedIn by searching Rich Gassaway. And thanks to everybody that's connected with me on the Facebook group and on LinkedIn. If you like the show, please consider going over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and subscribing. Search for SA Matters Radio, that's SA Matters Radio, and please consider leaving your feedback when you sign up. And if you like the show, give it a 5-star review. Not only will that motivate me, but also helps others to find the show. Well, that's it. Episode 76 is complete. Thank you to our guests, Brent Thomas, Stephen McGinnis, and Richard Crabe, for sharing your passion for learning from critical incidents to improve firefighter safety. Thank you to our sponsor, Midwest Fire. If you haven't checked them out, check them out, MidwestFire.com. They build all poly fire trucks. The body is entirely poly. You ought to see them. They are amazing. I've been to their factory. I've toured their factory and seen what they built. It is amazing. Check them out, MidwestFire.com. Thank you to all of our live event hosts, and thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. And remember, if you want to pick up my newest book, Situational Awareness Matters Volume 3, head over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the store link on the top of the page. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.